At Sunday dinner, Allison Morgan smiled as she reached for the mashed potatoes. "I can't wait for our big family cruise next month," she said brightly. Her sister Rebecca snorted, nearly choking on her wine. Their father leaned back and smirked. "It's for real family, Allie." Laughter erupted around the table. Allison froze. Her smile faded. Her heart dropped into her stomach. No one looked surprised. No one corrected him. Her mother quietly changed the subject. It was true. They had planned to go without her, and they had waited until dinner to drop the bomb. Allison nodded, eyes stinging, and began clearing the plates like nothing had happened. But something inside her shifted. What they didn't know was that every single reservation, cabins, excursions, even the dinner seating, had been booked under her name. She held the login. She held the keys. And she wasn't going to let this betrayal sail smoothly. Allison Morgan had always been the dependable one. At 28, she worked full-time as a travel coordinator for a boutique agency in Seattle. She was organized, meticulous, and the kind of person who remembered everyone's birthdays but rarely had hers remembered in return. In her family, that role was taken for granted. Her older sister, Rebecca, was the star, loud, glamorous, and constantly praised for even the smallest accomplishments. Her younger brother, Kyle, was the carefree baby, doted on and defended, no matter how irresponsible his behavior. Allison grew up in the shadows of their louder lives. She was the one who cleaned up after family dinners, who picked her parents up from the airport, who sent flowers on Mother's Day. Rebecca got the spotlight, Kyle got the excuses, and Allison got silence. So when her father brought up the idea of a family cruise 6 months earlier, Allison offered to plan it. She coordinated it all: flights, cabins, excursions, and port transport. She used her group cruise account, used her credit card to lock in the group discount, and spent weeks comparing itineraries to make sure everyone got something they'd enjoy. Each family member promised to reimburse her by the final payment deadline. At first, everything seemed normal. She created a shared itinerary spreadsheet, sent confirmation emails, and even helped her mom renew her passport. But as the departure date grew closer, small shifts began to appear. Rebecca stopped replying to group messages. Her father made vague comments about finalizing things soon, but never included her. Her brother Kyle asked for the trip details again, even though she had sent them 3 times. Then Allison noticed she had been removed from the group email thread she had originally created. When she asked about it, her mom brushed it off as a mistake. When she asked Rebecca, her sister laughed and said, "We figured you'd be busy with work." Still, Allison kept pushing through, telling herself she was imagining things. She updated the travel packets, finalized the dinner reservations, and even booked a dolphin swim Rebecca had mentioned offhandedly. Every email confirmation went through her cruise account, an account tied solely to her name and login. Without her approval, no changes could be made. Still, she didn't think she'd need to use that control. Until Sunday dinner. When Allison brought up the cruise in casual conversation, expecting final details to fall into place, her family's reaction exposed everything. Rebecca's snort, her father's smirk, the words, "It's for real, family, Allie." The room had gone quiet except for the laughter that followed. It wasn't just exclusion, it was cruelty, premeditated and unanimous. Every single person at the table had known she was no longer going, and no one had told her. She'd been expected to pay, plan, and disappear. That moment burned itself into her memory. But what they didn't know, what they would soon realize, is that Allison wasn't the same quiet girl who once faded into the background. She had the receipts. She had the power. And she had absolutely nothing left to lose. The betrayal cut deeper than any one-liner could capture. It wasn't just Rebecca's snide comment or her father's smug dismissal at dinner. It was the way they all looked at Allison afterward. Like excluding her had been discussed, agreed upon, and sealed before she even walked into the room. 2 days after the dinner, Rebecca posted a series of photos on Instagram, a snapshot of matching luggage, a boomerang of cocktails clinking, and a caption that read, "Can't wait for quality family time on the open sea." The likes rolled in. Extended family commented things like, "Wish I could join," or "Y'all deserve it." No one mentioned Allison. She wasn't even tagged. Her brother Kyle, who once called her for help filling out job applications, stayed silent. Not a word of support, no explanation. When Allison finally sent a message to the family group chat, "Just to clarify, am I actually not coming on the cruise I planned?" no one replied. Her message sat there, unread for a day, then marked seen. Then came the text from her mother. "It's best if you sit this one out, sweetie. We didn't want to make things awkward for everyone." Allison stared at it in disbelief. Awkward? For everyone? She had organized every leg of the journey, handled the paperwork, fronted the costs, secured the group rate. She hadn't even asked for interest or fees. All she'd wanted was 1 week to be included. Valued. A part of the family, not just their unpaid assistant. As she reread the message, Allison felt the pieces click into place. They'd never intended to bring her. They'd used her because she was easy, reliable, invisible. The planner, not the participant. Somewhere along the way, they had decided she wasn't fun enough, not close enough, that she didn't fit into their curated vacation image. Later, Claire, her closest friend, sent her a screenshot of a private Facebook comment Rebecca made in a cruise-themed group. Finally, going without the buzzkill. She'd be way more fun this time. Buzzkill. That's how her own sister saw her. Not the person who carried the family logistics on her back for years. Just someone to get rid of before the real fun began. But Rebecca had made one critical mistake. So had all of them. They didn't realize that every reservation, every cabin assignment, every excursion ticket was still in Allison's name. The cruise line's system required the original coordinator to release control before transferring management, and Allison hadn't done that yet. In fact, they hadn't even paid their balances. Only Allison had the access code to finalize the trip. They thought she'd walk away quietly, accept her role as the afterthought, swallow the pain, and let them go enjoy the dream vacation she had built. They thought she'd fade, like always. But this time, they were wrong. Allison wasn't going to scream or beg. She was going to teach them what it felt like to be forgotten by letting their entire dream vacation fall apart at the seams. Allison sat at her kitchen table, laptop open, fingers steady despite the storm inside her. She logged into the cruise reservation portal she'd used for months, the one tied directly to her email and credit. Every family member's name appeared like chess pieces on a board. Cabins, excursions, mealtimes, all of it still under her name. No one had bothered to ask for control because no one had imagined she'd do anything but roll over. She clicked Manage Guests. Then she paused. One deep breath. And then she canceled the group check-in, deleted the linked payment cards, changed the login credentials, and set up 2-factor authentication. When the email alert dinged, she smiled. Next, she called the cruise line directly. "This is Allison Morgan," she said. "I'm the primary on reservation 4862. Yes, I'd like to reassign the group booking to a solo traveler experience, just myself." The representative hesitated, but confirmed her authority. The cancellation fees for the other guests were automatically deducted, triggering a partial refund and freeing up space. But the remaining credit? Still under her name. She used it to upgrade her own cabin to a private spa suite with a balcony. Then she added excursions she'd always wanted. Swimming with stingrays, a chef's table dinner, a guided coastal hike. She even booked a private chauffeur to the port and a luxury hotel stay the night before. All quiet, all clean. No screaming, no confrontation. She wasn't sabotaging them out of spite. She was reclaiming what was hers. To protect herself legally, Allison created a digital archive, screenshots of text messages, email confirmations, group chat logs. A folder labeled cruise receipts sat on her desktop, just in case any of them tried to twist the story. She even called her credit card company to report she was the only authorized traveler, removing any linked accounts from the cruise file. 2 days later, Rebecca messaged the group chat. "Hey, anyone else getting weird notifications from the cruise site? I can't log in." Silence. Then her father chimed in. "It says we're not registered for check-in. Is there an error?" Allison didn't reply. She just watched. The final blow came when the cruise line sent out boarding reminders. Only her name appeared. 1 solo guest, 1 luxury suite, 1 unbothered traveler. She knew they'd figure it out at the terminal. The agents would tell them their cabins were canceled. The excursions were gone. No group dinner seating, no family cruise, no exceptions, and no refunds. They would stand there, sun hats in hand, luggage by their feet, stunned. And they would know. They would know the quiet one had finally had enough. They would know that Allison Morgan, the one they dismissed, underestimated, and excluded, had pulled the strings. And she had cut them all. At the port that morning, the sun was already blistering as Rebecca strutted ahead in her designer sandals, sunglasses perched high on her nose. Their parents followed, dragging 3 oversized suitcases and barking at the younger cousins to stay in line. The whole family looked like they were preparing for a magazine shoot, excited, impatient, loud. Until they reached the check-in counter. One by one, the cruise staff began shaking their heads. Reservation numbers didn't work, names weren't registered, cabins weren't assigned. At first, they insisted it had to be a mistake. Then Rebecca pulled out her phone to try logging in. Locked out, password changed. A wave of confusion rolled over the group. Voices rose, accusations flew. Staff politely explained that nothing could be done without the primary account holder present. That's when Rebecca's phone buzzed. A notification from Allison. Just a photo. Allison on the ship's upper deck. A glass of champagne in her hand. Behind her, the ocean sparkled. Her caption read, "Bon voyage." Rebecca screamed. Her mother gasped. Her father turned red with fury and began calling her phone over and over. 17 missed calls in the first half hour. Then, a string of texts. "How dare you? Fix this right now. This is disgraceful." But Allison didn't answer. She was already on board, checking into her spa suite with a warm towel and flute of Prosecco waiting. A staff member addressed her by name and escorted her to her private balcony. She had never felt so relaxed. At first, there was a flicker of guilt, the kind that comes from a lifetime of being the peacemaker, of smoothing things over, of swallowing feelings to keep others comfortable. But then she remembered Sunday dinner. Her father's words, "It's for real family, Allie." Rebecca's snort. The laughter. That wasn't love, that was mockery. And what they were experiencing now, it wasn't cruelty, it was consequence. She muted the family group chat. Then she turned her phone off. That evening, Allison wandered the ship alone, and to her surprise, she didn't feel lonely. She met a woman traveling solo after a divorce, a retired teacher celebrating her freedom, and a pair of best friends on a healing trip. They welcomed her like she mattered. Over dinner, she told them the story. Not every detail, but enough. One of them raised a glass and said, "To choosing yourself." Allison smiled. The betrayal still stung. Her own family had used her, discarded her, and laughed in her face. But the silence now, the absence of their constant judgment and control, wasn't painful. It was freeing. She soaked in her spa tub under the stars, listening to the ship's gentle hum and the distant sound of music. For once, no one needed her to book a dinner, organize a tour, or fix someone else's mistake. She didn't have to be useful to be valued. And the more the ship sailed forward, the smaller that old life felt behind her. She didn't know if her family would ever apologize. But she knew now that their approval had never been necessary. Allison had finally given herself permission to be happy, to be whole, to be seen, not for what she could organize or give, but for who she was. And for the first time in her life, that was more than enough. While Allison sipped cocktails in a private lounge under warm Caribbean skies, her family was in chaos back home. Rebecca's tantrum at the cruise terminal had become legendary. She screamed at staff, tried to bribe a port agent, and then collapsed into tears when nothing worked. Their parents were livid and humiliated, scrambling for hotel rooms in Miami while the actual cruise ship sailed into the sunset without them. Within 24 hours, Rebecca took to social media. A carefully filtered photo of her at a beachside resort, captioned, "Some people are just jealous." But the internet wasn't fooled. Comments rolled in asking, "Didn't your sister plan the whole thing?" Someone even reposted Allison's bon voyage photo. A distant cousin commented, "This is what happens when you burn the wrong bridge." Meanwhile, Allison enjoyed every second. She lounged in quiet reading rooms, savored gourmet meals, attended wellness workshops, and journaled under the stars. There were no demands, no eye rolls, no passive-aggressive barbs, just peace and clarity. By the time the ship returned, Allison felt lighter. Not because she had gotten back at them, but because she had finally stopped shrinking to fit into a family that never made space for her. When she got home, her parents were waiting on the porch. Her mother held a Tupperware container of her favorite casserole. Her father looked sheepish, fidgeting with his watch. "We just want to talk," her mom said, "to explain." Allison didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She invited them in, set a mug of tea in front of each of them, and laid her phone on the table. Then, she calmly walked them through everything. She showed them the cruise confirmation emails, the payments she'd made on her credit card, the emails that slowly stopped including her, the passive-aggressive message from her mother telling her to sit this one out. And then, she played the voice note Rebecca had accidentally sent, while mocking her. It was short, just 30 seconds, but it was cruel. Rebecca's voice, sharp and smug. "She's so uptight, always clinging on. She'll figure it out when the ship sails without her. Maybe then she'll get the hint." Silence fell over the room. Her mother began to cry. Her father rubbed his face with both hands and said, "We didn't think you'd care that much." Allison let the silence stretch. "I did care," she said, voice steady. "I cared enough to plan every detail. I cared enough to hope that maybe, for once, I'd be included. But now, I care about myself more." Her parents tried to apologize, but it was too late. Allison didn't scream. She didn't demand. She simply said, "You made your choices. Now I'm making mine." They left soon after. Later that week, Allison gathered all the receipts, emails, and booking confirmations. She filed a small claims case for the unpaid deposits, almost $4,300, 0 cents in total. Her family had promised to reimburse her, and never did. The court reviewed the evidence. She won without contest. She didn't keep the money. She donated every dollar to a local women's shelter, attaching a note with the donation, "For those who deserve a seat." She never mentioned it to her family. She didn't need to. Word spread anyway, especially among extended relatives. Some reached out with quiet support. Others stayed silent. That was fine with her. She wasn't chasing validation anymore. Rebecca sent a text a month later. "I didn't mean to hurt you." Allison didn't respond. Because this wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't about punishing them. It was about recognizing her own worth. For years, Allison had been the planner, the helper, the overlooked glue holding everything together while never being seen. But now, she was something else entirely. She was done asking for a seat at their table. She was building her own. 3 months later, Allison stood at the edge of another cruise dock, this time smiling for real. No tension in her shoulders, no dread in her chest, just sunlight on her skin and the warm buzz of anticipation. But this cruise was different. It wasn't for her family. It wasn't to earn anyone's approval. It was hers, booked with 2 new friends she'd met on her first solo voyage, Naomi, a photographer from Seattle, and Danny, a wellness coach from Austin. Together, they'd formed an unlikely but powerful bond, all 3 having been excluded or overlooked in some way by their families. They called themselves the Reclaimers. Allison didn't just enjoy the trip, she thrived, ziplining through rainforests, dancing barefoot on a beach under the moonlight, journaling at sunrise. These weren't just memories, they were proof. Proof that life after betrayal wasn't just possible, it could be vibrant, joyful, even healing. When she returned home, she did something she'd been putting off for years. She redecorated her apartment. Not with things she thought her mother would approve of, or items Rebecca would praise. She painted her walls teal, hung travel maps marked with pins, and framed her favorite cruise photos. The centerpiece in her living room, a canvas that read, "Loved enough already." She also started hosting monthly dinners, not for family, but for new friends. Women from solo travel groups, local community meetups, a few coworkers she'd once kept at arm's length. Her table was full of laughter, stories, and wine. Not once did anyone ask her to sit this one out. No one made her feel like background noise. She was seen, heard, valued. One night, after pouring wine for her guests, Naomi leaned over and said, "You know, you've got a real gift for this, bringing people together. You ever think about doing this for others?" Allison blinked, then smiled. And that's how her side business began. She started small, just helping a few women plan solo trips. Then came the requests for group retreat coordination, boundary setting coaching, and itinerary templates. Within 6 months, she had a thriving platform called Unraveling, a travel consultancy for women ready to reclaim joy on their own terms. She partnered with wellness brands, spoke at local women's retreats, and even got invited to a podcast to talk about family estrangement and the healing power of choosing yourself. Her story resonated. Not because she'd gotten even, but because she hadn't let the hurt define her. She'd transformed it. She still got the occasional email from her parents, polite, surface level. Once, Rebecca even messaged, saying, "You should have just talked to us instead of ruining the trip." Allison read it, then archived it without replying. She no longer explained herself. She didn't need to. The old Allison might have bent backward to smooth it over. She would have internalized the blame, tried to fix what she never broke. But the new Allison knew better. She wasn't cold. She wasn't cruel. She was clear. And clarity is power. When people at retreats asked her how she found the courage to walk away, she always said the same thing. "I didn't walk away. I walked home, to myself." Her peace didn't come from revenge. It came from reclaiming her place in her own life. And in doing so, she created space for others to do the same. Allison never needed her family's permission to feel worthy. She just needed her own. 1 year after the cruise that never was, Allison sat on the balcony of a whitewashed villa in Santorini. The sky glowed in pinks and golds as the sun melted into the Aegean Sea. The air was warm, and the wine in her glass was sweet, but it was the quiet inside her chest that felt the most sacred. No knots. No weight. Just peace. She snapped a photo of the view and saved it to her phone, not to post, not to prove anything, but to remember, to honor the moment. Her phone buzzed. A message from her mom. 4 words. "We miss you. Come home." No apology, no ownership, just a hollow olive branch. Allison stared at the message. For a moment, the old ache stirred, that lifelong craving for warmth, for being seen. But then, just as quickly, it faded. She didn't feel rage. She didn't feel sorrow. She felt done. She pressed delete. That simple gesture, quiet and final, felt like a ceremony, not of loss, but of freedom. She didn't reply because she didn't need to. There were no more arguments to win, no explanations to offer. The truth had spoken clearly enough in how they treated her and in how she chose to treat herself. Back inside, a soft breeze lifted the sheer curtains. She closed her journal, where she had just written, "The best part of my life didn't begin with their acceptance. It began with mine." That realization changed everything. Allison no longer woke up wondering how her family saw her. She didn't waste time replaying old dinners or dissecting Rebecca's snide comments. She didn't hope for that one perfect call where someone finally said, "We were wrong," because they wouldn't. And it didn't matter. She had built something new. A life where love was mutual. Where friends checked in just because. Where she got to decide what she was worth. And most importantly, where she didn't have to fight to belong. The solo trip to Greece had been spontaneous, booked on a rainy Tuesday afternoon after a group chat with Naomi and Danny. They couldn't join this time, but they'd all promised to reunite for a retreat in Bali next spring. Just knowing that was enough to make Allison feel surrounded. She toasted the setting sun, not to what she'd lost, but to what she'd gained. Because sometimes the best way to heal isn't to patch things up. It's to stop bleeding for people who never learn to be careful with your heart. And the most powerful closure isn't words from someone else. It's the moment you realize you no longer need them. That night, as she tucked herself into bed, with the balcony doors open to the stars, Allison smiled. She was alone, but not lonely. Not abandoned, but whole. Not forgotten, but finally remembered, by herself. Have you ever been excluded by the very people you always showed up for? Treated like an afterthought in your own family, while they leaned on you for everything behind the scenes? Allison's story isn't just about a canceled cruise, it's about boundaries. About realizing that being dependable doesn't mean you should be disposable. It's about the quiet power of reclaiming what's yours when others try to write you out. Her family thought they could cut her out, take her efforts, and leave her behind without consequence. But Allison reminded them who really held the keys. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She just acted, with clarity, with grace, and with unapologetic control. So, let us ask you, have you ever had to walk away from toxic family ties just to breathe again? Just to find your peace? Share your story in the comments. Let someone else know they're not alone. And if Allison's journey spoke to your heart, if you've ever been the one excluded, underestimated, or used, hit that like button. Subscribe to Veiled Fury for more true stories of betrayal, boundaries, and beautifully quiet revenge. Because sometimes, the most powerful comeback isn't a confrontation. It's sipping champagne alone in first class, while they scramble for answers. And that smile, that's not pettiness, that's peace. Because being underestimated doesn't make you weak. It makes you unstoppable.